What is the best James Bond film? Some people love the Sean Connery era, particularly as Goldfinger, which solidified the formula of the Bond franchise from the action-packed prologue and charismatic villain to the tuxedo and the iconic opening credits set to the title song.
Goldfinger, he's the man with the Midas touch.
Others admire the unflappable eccentricity of Roger Moore. For many, James Bond is synonymous with Pierce Brosnan, who, over 4 films, transformed the franchise into a mega-budget blockbuster. However, if we were to evaluate the Bond film series not solely for nostalgic reasons but as cinematic works, the answer becomes quite clear. Casino Royale was released 15 years ago and represented a specific reboot of the franchise. The producers faced an ambitious task, preserving the spirit of the original films while introducing a new 007 to a new generation. On one hand, the film has everything we love about Bond: spectacular action sequences, gadgets, and stylish worldwide locations. On the other hand, Casino Royale is a radical deconstruction of one of the most iconic characters in global cinema.
Vodka martini.
Shaken or stirred?
Do I look like I give a damn?
While Bond films were never known for their seriousness, and some classic films might seem comical today, by the early 2000s, the franchise had become increasingly detached from reality. After GoldenEye, which attempted to fit the character into a changing world,
Because I think you're a sexist, misogynist dinosaur, a relic of the Cold War, whose boyish charms, though wasted on me, obviously appeal to that young woman I sent out to evaluate you.
there was a shift towards grandiose and fantastical action. Die Another Day, the last film with Pierce Brosnan, released just a year after 9/11, did not align with the new reality. Casino Royale did for Bond what Batman Begins did for The Dark Knight, offering a realistic examination of the character and finding the drama that evokes sympathy. The once elegant hero pays a high price for his mistakes, falls, sweats, and we literally feel every bruise on Agent 007's body. Daniel Craig's Bond is no longer the charming spy, but a killing machine. Where other agents might find an elegant solution, he goes head-on. Violence and cruelty have always been part of Bond, but for the first time, the creators ponder how the killings affect the moral state of the iconic character. The film vividly illustrates the cost of 007's killings and how he copes with the stress. Casino Royale raises the question, can Bond be considered worthy of sympathy and compassion at all?
I would ask you if you could remain emotionally detached. But I don't think that's your problem, is it, Bond?
No.
An attempt to bring James Bond closer to realism was made back in the late 1980s, when Timothy Dalton took on the role of the edgy, near-nervous breakdown assassin. However, the 2 films he starred in were unremarkable both in terms of plot and characters, as well as from a cinematic perspective. The revolution brought about by Casino Royale also lay in the visual language that director Martin Campbell devised for the Bond reboot. Firstly, he and cinematographer Phil Miho creatively employed a dynamic camera that moves interestingly, even in simple establishing shots, and used in-frame editing to keep the audience engaged. For example, observe how creative the transition from one dialogue to another can be. Secondly, in contrast to classical Bond films where the camera acted as an objective point of view, in Casino Royale, it conveyed the character's state, their subjective view of the world. The grainy black and white in an uncomfortable scene of the first murder, the Dutch angle intensifying the sense of instability, and the shaky camera with a flare effect in the poisoning sequence. The fast editing and shaky camera in action scenes were evidently influenced by the Jason Bourne franchise, but in Casino Royale, handheld shooting is used selectively, unlike the subsequent installment, Quantum of Solace, where it's often unclear what's happening at all. Martin Campbell often opts for static shots where tension is built through the actors' performances, angles, and editing. Or through color. In this frame, the division between warm and cool tones visualizes the conflict between the characters. The poker game is essentially a movie within a movie, complete with its own setup, subplots, climax, and resolution. In the final scene of the game, we encounter close-up shots that transform the card game into an intense duel of glances. Here, color dramaturgy comes into play again, with the protagonist in a white shirt pitted against the villain in a black jacket. In this regard, Casino Royale reminds us of film noirs, a style it directly references in the black and white prologue and later in the final scenes, using silhouettes to create a play of shadows and numerous shots through grills, through which we view the doomed characters. Apart from its visual elegance, Casino Royale stands out due to its dramatic excellence. The film became the first part of the franchise in which the main character has a well-thought-out plot arc and character development. The previous attempt to turn Bond into a dramatic film was made back in the late 1960s in the underrated On Her Majesty's Secret Service, where Agent 007 unexpectedly fell in love and got married but soon lost his love. The only thing hindering the film was the unexpressive performance of the lead actor, George Lazenby. In Casino Royale, Daniel Craig passionately portrays character development. The entire film is not just a story about a specific mission, but a full-fledged origin story, almost a coming-of-age tale. At the beginning, Bond is portrayed as a defiant young man who clashes with authority. M becomes a kind of parental figure who points out the main weaknesses of the hero.
Bond, this may be too much for a blunt instrument to understand, but arrogance and self-awareness seldom go hand in hand.
So you want me to be half monk, half hitman?
Any thug can kill. I want you to take your ego out of the equation.
It's with his ego that Bond will struggle throughout the film. Following the laws of a coming-of-age story, he faces trials that fundamentally change his character. The most significant of these is his encounter with Vesper Lynd.
I'm the money.
Every penny of it.
Traditionally in Bond films, female characters served as either disposable material, disguised traitors, or beautiful but mostly helpless damsels in distress. In Casino Royale, there is a similar character, but her presence only shows that Bond is now shedding his familiar macho traits. He prefers fulfilling the mission over an evening with a lady, and his indifferent reaction to her death demonstrates the emotional inferiority of the character. Indirectly, this can be seen as a critique of sexism throughout the Bond franchise. Now, the objectification extends not only to Bond's women, but to the agent himself.
So as charming as you are, Mr. Bond, I will be keeping my eye on our government's money and off your perfectly formed house.
You noticed.
Even accountants have imagination.
Vesper Lynd, portrayed by Eva Green, is Bond's equal. A complex and strong character whose role goes beyond the femme fatale archetype. Their scenes with Daniel Craig resemble an intricate game of ping-pong, during which the backstory of the main character and his dramatic past is revealed. In these moments, we see a different Bond. Sensitive and vulnerable. It's only this Bond that can be genuinely loved. Thanks to Vesper Lynd, Agent 007 gains a noticeable level of psychological depth and learns to shed a tear. In the end, he becomes the Bond we know. Tough, closed off, and trusting no one. Eva Green's character had such a significant impact that her presence is felt, one way or another, in the subsequent installments with Daniel Craig.
You're not going to let me in there, are you? You've got your armor back on. That's that.
I have no armor left. You stripped it from me. Whatever is left of me. Whatever is left of me. Whatever I am, I'm yours.
Another crucial character in Bond's development is the main antagonist, Lucifer, played by Mads Mikkelsen. He has a grounded and understandable motive, to win money to avoid a grim fate. World-scale destruction is not part of Lucifer's plans. In a couple of scenes, we even feel sympathy for the character in his desperate situation. The main aspect, following the rules of creating a good antagonist, is that he is, in many ways, a mirror image of the main character. Like Bond, he is extremely self-assured and becomes a hostage of his inability to lose. The poker game becomes a battle of egos. A pivotal episode in their confrontation is the torture scene, which once again shatters the myth of James Bond's invincibility. While in previous films, Bond often found himself in helpless situations, he certainly never sat naked on a chair with a cutout seat, undergoing realistic torture.
I've got a little itch. Down there.
right! To the right!
Unlike the antagonist, Bond accepts his mortality and limitations, and within minutes of screen time, he submits his resignation. But his respite is short-lived because James Bond, by his very nature, is a deeply tragic character who cannot be at peace with himself and must lose everyone he loves. This is why the only thematic continuation of Casino Royale can be found in Skyfall, which also deconstructed the stereotypically masculine image of Bond.
Well, first time for everything. Yes.
What makes you think this is my first time?
Oh, Mr. Bond.
The aging Agent 007 can't pass the fitness tests. The villain has a personal and universally understandable motive again, and at the heart of the intrigue is a strong woman, M, portrayed by Judi Dench. However, their mother-son relationship with Bond is only fully comprehensible when viewed in light of the previous films. The incredibly beautiful cinematography by Roger Deakins often exists separately from the plot's development. The film, while mocking the series' templates, ultimately ends up as a non-timely restoration of classic Bond, a feat proven impossible to reproduce effectively, as Spectre demonstrated. Though Daniel Craig's potential might not have been fully realized over the 5 films, Casino Royale remains the pinnacle of the legendary franchise and the best version of Agent 007's journey, from a black and white noirish assassin to the iconic character who needs no introduction. At the end, I want to say that I took the idea and script for this video from the Kino Poesque YouTube channel. I really enjoyed their film analysis, so I wanted to adapt their videos for an English-speaking audience.